Hello, my name is Krishnani and today I will present about the climate change and global warming, including the impact on ecosystem and human health. I will explain about what is truly climate change, global warming, the biological concept related to this issue, connect them to the real-world outcomes, and support them with the recent case studies. So, climate change is the long-term alteration of temperature and typically weather patterns in a place. It is largely due to human activities like burning fossil fuels and deforestation. So, global warming is one of the major effects of climate change, which refer to the rise in Earth's average temperature. Next, there are four main biological concepts that help us understand climate change and global warming. So first, the greenhouse effect explains how gases trap heat in the atmosphere due to human activity. Second, respiration and metabolism show how living organisms cope with heat stress, then release a carbon dioxide due to a lot of energy produced. Third, ecosystem dynamics and biodiversity highlight how species interactions and survival are disrupted. Finally, disease ecology explains how changing climate change influence the spread of infectious disease such as dengue and malaria. Now, let us see how these concepts explain real-world situations that impact on the ecosystem. So first, impacts on the marine ecosystems. So the greenhouse effect increases the global temperature, which directly affects the coral reefs. So when sea temperatures rise, corals become stressed and expel their symbiotic algae. This process is known as bleaching, leads to coral death and biodiversity loss. So example case studies is in Great Barrier Reef, 91% of surveyed reefs were bleached in 2022. This showing how global warming threatens marine ecosystems and coastal livelihood. So, this demonstrates how the greenhouse effect has directly biological impacts on the oceans. Second is the impact on the Arctic ecosystem. So, climate change disrupts ecosystem dynamics by altering habitats and reducing biodiversity. In the Arctic, melting sea ice reduces the hunting grounds of polar bears, which rely on the ice platform to catch seals or to find their food. This imbalance threatens the survival of species at the top of the food chain. So, the case studies is in 2022, Arctic sea ice reached a minimum 4.87 million square kilometers, which is 30% below the average. This is not only endanger polar bears, but also contribute to the sea level rise, which flood coastal areas and submerge low-lying lands. So it shows how ecosystem change in the region can affect biodiversity and human worldwide. We move to the next is the impact on the forest ecosystem. So forests normally act as a carbon sinks, absorbing the carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. However, under drought and heat, respiration increases while photosynthesis decreases. So this weakens the forest's ability to store the carbon and increase emission through wildfire. So the example of case study is in 2023, the Amazon rainforest faced its worst drought in 40 years with over 120,000 wildfire outbreaks. So this reduced the carbon storage, accelerated global warming, and threatened biodiversity. So it is clear the example of how ecosystem dynamics and respirations are linked to the climate change. So now, let's see how the climate change and global warming impacts on the human health and how the biological concept connect to the real-world situation on this impact. The first impact on human health is heat stress in human, which the rising temperature affect human biology through respiration and metabolism. Our bodies produce energy and release heat, but during the extreme heat, this balance is disrupted. So the excessive heat causes dehydration, cardiovascular strains, and even death in vulnerable groups. So the example of case study is during the 2022 Europe heatwave, the UK recorded temperature above 400 degrees Celsius for the first time, and across Europe, more than 6,100 people excess deaths were linked to the heat stress. So this shows how climate change directly affects the human metabolism and survival. Second is disease ecology. So disease ecology explains on how climate change influences infectious disease. Mosquitoes such as Aedes aegypti, which spread the dengue fever, thrive in hot and humid conditions. So warmer temperatures speed up the mosquito breeding and virus replication, which increase the disease transmission. So the example of case study is in Malaysia, more than 123,000 dengue cases were recorded in 2019, and cases surged again in 2022 and 2023. So partly due to warming conditions and El Nino events, so this case study shows how climate change can worsen public health risks. So now I will outline the key solutions. So first, cutting greenhouse gas emission through renewables, energy efficiency, and cleaner transport is the foundation of mitigation. Second, protecting and restoring the ecosystem, such as replanting forests and supporting the coral reef rehabilitation to strengthen the natural carbon sinks and protect the biodiversity. Third, we must adapt human health system with early warning system, heat health action plans, and improve disease surveillance and vector control to reduce heat and disease burdens. Finally, effective climate policy, financing, and community actions are needed to scale this measuring fairly and quickly. In conclusion, climate change driven mainly by human activity causes global warming that disrupts biological system and human health. Understanding the biological concept such as the greenhouse effect, respiration and metabolism, economic dynamics and biodiversity, and disease ecology help explain why these impacts occurs. So the case studies presented illustrate real and urgent risks. Tackling the crisis requires combined solutions such as deep emission reduction, ecosystem protection and restoration, and health adaptation measures. Immediate and coordinated action can reduce future harm to the ecosystem and human health. That's all from me. Thank you.